Okay, one strategy that I use for a differentiated classroom is putting my students in different cooperative learning groups. And an icon on the door as the student enters alerts the child as to what seating arrangement he or she will be in for this particular class period. Today, the students were seated in their writing groups, and these were basically readiness-based. In each of the groups, I had a leader, and that leader wore what is called an Ask Me visor, so that in the event that there was a question in the cooperative learning group, they would ask the Ask Me person wearing the green visor, and then the Ask Me people would be the ones that would ask me questions that they couldn't answer. Home base basically is strict alphabetical order. I use that at the beginning of the year so that when I'm collecting the multitude of handouts that the children are given, emergency medical forms, all those types of things, they're seated in alphabetical order. Another icon I use is the grammar groups. And in the grammar groups, the children are also seated in readiness groups so that the high ability students are working with other high ability students. And the students that have not quite mastered a concept, they would be working with me at their tables, and I would kind of use my cruising method to go around and address each of the groups. Even when we go to the computer lab, I have children seated in a certain configuration. I put a strong computer person with one who probably isn't as proficient, and that way I'm not running around ragged like trying to, answer all the questions. I have a go-to person so that it kind of works as a study buddy, learning partner, whatever you want to call it. And then the final configuration that I use is the special interest. When we do our diversity essays, it's actually a PowerPoint we do in January. The students are seated with other individuals who are researching the same kind of a topic. For example, cancer, there might be lung cancer, breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, but all the cancer researchers are seated together. Other people are seated with there's usually a large number of students doing diabetes or spina bifida, conditions that they have found have run in their own families. We always try to make personal connections. So this is the icon mode that I use. This is just simply what we are doing each day. Each day on the door I have down what standard is being addressed, what indicator, and the task, so that as the children are waiting for the previous class to exit, they will be alerted as to what will be going on in this class today. And that helps to alleviate the questions, what are we doing today, what are we doing today, what are we doing today, because they can just simply read it. They're into the routine of doing this, and it seems to work really well. Okay. This is our weekly assignment board, and it gives the students direction as to what we will be doing in the coming week. I always try to capture the theme of the week, and this week's theme is the final copy of our community essay that we've been working on for 3 weeks. And so I want the students to come in with a understanding that we are going to be finalizing our community essays, and I have delineated from Monday all the way through Friday what will be happening in class, barring any unforeseen circumstances, so that the students can not only see daily the agenda, but they will know by every single day what their homework is. Over here behind my desk, I put down more specific details as to the homework. For example, tonight the students are to remember to bring in their silent reading book for tomorrow. We will also be having a grammar assessment tomorrow, and just a reminder that the final copy and all of their preliminary work of their rough drafts of the community essay will be due on Friday. This is the first thing that the students do once they enter the classroom. After they've realized where their seat is, what configuration we're doing, what the task is, they take out their student planner and they automatically, without exception, copy down their homework. In addition, I send home an email to each of the groups. I have 5 sections of students. I have period 1, 3, 4, 6, and 7. And what I have done is I've created a broadcast email that goes home to all of the parents, so that the parents can be alerted as to the nightly homework assignments. I do this for 2 reasons. One, in case a student has totally forgotten to bring home his or her planner, and 2, because I feel that parents need to be partners in the educational process. I feel that if we can work together, the student, the school, and the parent, we have a triage, we have a really strong way of getting connected to that learner and to make that learner succeed and to achieve. Also, I will send home rubrics. It just seems like so many times my students will either forget their rubric or leave their rubric at school, and especially for something as major as a community essay, which is a summative assessment, I just send home as an attachment the rubric so that the parent and the student together can sit down and self-evaluate that essay before it becomes mine on Friday. The strategy that I use today is the cubing activity, and this is a really, really easy strategy for teachers to implement on differentiated instruction. Basically, I had the children assigned to editing teams, and I did a lot of this behind the scenes, so it wasn't really obvious on the DVD. But basically what I did is I found a strong writer who would be the, quote, ask me person, and they were the ones wearing the green visors. And those were the go-to people, so that if there were any kinds of questions during the course of the activity, the first line of defense would be to go to the Ask Me person, and then the Ask Me people would ask me if they couldn't answer their group's questions. Basically what a person does in editing, well, everyone knows what you do in editing, but in cubing, what you do is you create a task card. And the task card basically is just a sheet of paper with 6 numbers. And this is called Cubing 101. There are different levels of cubing, but I did this very easily. And it took me probably about half an hour at the most to create this task card. And I did not make an easy task card and then a harder one. That's another variation of cubing. And a third variation of cubing would be to align your tasks according to Bloom's taxonomy, with the easier tasks being questions 1, 2, and 3, and of course the harder ones being 4, 5, and 6. All I did, as you probably have heard, is I gave each person a job to do. And whatever number that he or she rolled on this cube, and I would recommend getting these lightweight cubes and not the blocks, because I had the blocks one year and kind of the clankety clank drove me crazy. And so just get these lightweight cubes, have the student roll, and whatever number that they get, that is going to be their task for the rest of the period. I have it set up on 6-minute rotations because I've done this in the past with my 7th graders, and that seems to be the optimal amount of time needed to complete each of the tasks. You can adjust it accordingly. Maybe you have learners who are not quite as proficient, or maybe you have learners that are more proficient, so maybe you could reduce the time. That, of course, is up to the individual teacher. But my tasks were sentence detective, spelling, usage, contraction, and you, police. Number 3 was the transition translator. 4, the vocabulary, king or queen. 5, the tired title terminator and the capitalization patrol. And 6 was the thesis statement theatrical director. All the students do, they roll the cube, they perform the task, the bell rings, they rotate one person to the left, they inherit a new paper, they stick with that task throughout the duration of the activity. At the end, I used what is called an exit ticket, because what I wanted to do, I wanted to try to get a gauge, a pulse, on where my students were with this activity. So I used the exit ticket. I will be looking at these tonight, and that way I can know whether or not there are certain individual needs that I would need to address on the next day of class. At the very beginning of the period, I do what is called bell work, and bell work is just an opportunity for the children to come in, sit down, do something so that I can take attendance. It's just a management strategy that I use so that I don't have to waste valuable class time taking attendance. Today they did what is called 5 and 5. I just gave them 5 questions, and it was just like a review of different skills we've had throughout the course of the year. They had 5 minutes to do it, we checked it, and then we moved on to our cubing activity. An easy management strategy that I do is color coding my classes. My first period class is green. I think in my heart, green means go, let's get started. And kind of facetiously, I tell the students they're my green class, and I actually call them my green guinea pig class. And the reason I do that is I say to the students, I said, in case something doesn't work out so well with you guys, I have a chance to fix it before third period. They think that's kind of funny. So my third period class is, of course, my blue class. My fourth period class I call my sunshine class. My sixth period class is my lavender class, and the reason I call it lavender is because it's the class right after lunch. Traditionally, students could get a little bit boisterous, and I try to explain to them, you know, all of the elements of lavender and how it's a calming agent, and I spray lavender, and I just have the whole lavender theme going on. So it seems to help bring them down into more of an instructional mode. And then my end of the day, last period class is my red class. I just think of stop, last period. Everything I do, from their data folders to their reflection journals, which are housed right here. Each student has made a reflection journal, to their writing portfolios. Everything is in the color of their class. I also put down a student's roster number, and I have found that not only by having the student's name, but his or her roster number, when I'm trying to organize papers, it's a lot easier and more efficient to go according to numbers than to try to figure out alphabetical order. It's just one of those little tricks of the trade. Another idea that you might want to embrace in what I do is I have a binder for each of my classes. This, of course, is from period 1 because it's green. And in the binder, I have everything that the students have written as far as a pre-assessment. Now, on the first day of school, when the students come in, I have a letter that I have written to my students, and I have a piece of this fancy stationery at each of their desks, and they are to write back to me. And the purpose of this is so that I can get to know the student, and I also use it as a pre-assessment for when we do friendly letters or even paragraph writing. So it's a very seamless way to do a pre-assessment. On the back of each of these, you will notice a small note. What these are simply copies of letters of encouragement that I have each of the parents write to their son or daughter. These they glue inside their marble composition book, which is called their learning log. And anytime they're taking a test and they want that note of encouragement out on their desk, I allow them to have it. I have done this for 4 years. I have color-coded my classes for probably 20 years, a long time. And I have noticed that it has really seemed to work really well. It helps keep me organized, and I'm sure it helps the students. In this binder also, I have graphs. These are the results of the students' learning styles that they take at the beginning of the year. Each student is responsible for creating his or her own graph. Notice that it's on green paper because everything, when I say everything's in green, I literally mean everything. I ask the students then to chart where their strengths are, where their areas of growth would be, and where their minor learning style is. And then in their reflection journal, we say what that means. In other words, if a person is a strong individual learner, then during a high-stakes test, they're not going to be seated here in a cooperative learning group with the dividers up. They will be at a study carrel by himself or herself during the high-stakes test. I actually use these so readily when I'm grouping my students. So many times I find that I will have a performance task summative assessment for all my visual learners. They might have to create something that is maybe a PowerPoint presentation. My auditory learners, they like to do things that they might use a microphone or just something that they can record. They love doing that. And my kinesthetic learners, they like to make literal projects. When we did our propaganda unit, they actually made a product that would fulfill a need in their life. I had everything from Love Again spray, from the girl whose boyfriend just dumped her, to edible cups, the young man who was responsible for cleanup at his brother's graduation party, and he didn't want to clean up all the cups, so he created a product called edible cups so that after you drank from the cup you would just eat it. I mean, so it's just been really a great experience knowing the students' learning styles, and I've done this probably for 25 years, I would say. Another idea that you might want to use is I do a multiple intelligences survey. This you can find online. I just printed it out because it is quite lengthy, and I have learned that if you chunk it and maybe only do like 1 page a day for 4 days, then you will get better results from your students. But this goes along with Gardner's multiple intelligences, and as you are aware, there are 9 multiple intelligences now, not 8. And then after the student has completed this, then he or she will chart, what is his or her strength, and I will use that when I'm grouping my students for various activities in the classroom. Over here I have a mailbox where if a student wants to communicate to me and he or she doesn't have time, or maybe I'm being surrounded by other students, they can just slip a note inside the mailbox, put up the flag, and that alerts me to the fact that I have a message, kind of like, you got mail? Well, it just helps me know that there is a student that might need my assistance, or just a comment, maybe they're not happy with who they're sitting by in class, or maybe they are happy. I mean, there's all kinds of comments, and I welcome any and all comments. They don't have to sign their notes, it can be anonymous, but this is just another strategy I use. Over here are just simply my shelves, that I use for papers that have been graded that are going back to the students. I don't do any of that. I have a page assigned to each section, and the page's responsibility is to look to see if there are any papers that need passed back to the individual students. He or she will take the papers and pass them out. Anything that you can assign a student to do that helps alleviate what you need to do is what I would strongly recommend. These are all Harry Wong ideas, so I definitely want to give credit to, excuse me, Harry Wong, because he is the master of organization. Another idea that I use is the absent folder. Whenever a student is absent, I assign a scribe. The page is the one who passes out the papers, and the scribe would come over to the folder and would take out one of these sheets that says, "We missed you while you were absent," and the scribe would write down what the teacher collected, any announcements that I made or reminders, the assignments or activities that were done in class, and any homework assignments. The scribe would then take this yellow paper along with any handout that might have been distributed, paper clip it. I have all of my supplies up here on this table so that students are not, asking me for various supplies. They can just come up here and get what they need. And then the scribe puts it in the absent folder. The next day, when the student returns to school, they give me their absence slip, which I sign, and they automatically come over here and pick up their assigned work. And that way, I don't have to run around, trying to collect different handouts and trying to remember what we do yesterday and this kind of deal. And it's very seamless, it's very organized. The kids know the procedure. I would just say that if you can just teach procedures like the first couple weeks of school, everything else runs itself like a well-oiled machine.